Chapter 1. The Sound of Silence. The city never really slept, but now it no longer breathed. Once, neon burned the night sky with feverish color. Skyscrapers climbed into the heavens like titans of glass and steel, and people filled the streets with laughter, commerce, and the hum of ordinary life. Now, in 2147, all of it lay under a heavy pall. Empty walkways, shops gutted, towers hollowed of warmth. It wasn't war, nor famine, nor plague that had broken the spine of civilization. It was hope itself. The heroes had done this. The protectors, they called themselves, an assembly of men and women who had been gods among mortals. They had ended wars in seconds, solved droughts by wringing rain from the clouds, and once even pulled an asteroid from the sky with sheer force of will. The world had given them everything: reverence, obedience, worship, and the world had paid for it. Speed moved through the ruin. To the untrained eye, it looked as though the streets were still deserted. To the survivors hidden in basements and collapsed subways, the city seemed silent. But if one could slow time, if one could pause the tick of the second hand, they would see a streak of pale motion cutting through the night like a blade of lightning. He darted from one corner to another, traversing a mile in less than a heartbeat, his passage ruffling dust into miniature storms. He was not searching for anyone in particular. Not yet. He was listening. The sound of fear lingered in places men tried to hide it. A stifled cough, the shallow quiver of lungs that dared not take full air, the shift of cloth against rubble as someone adjusted their crouch. Speed heard all of it, and he smiled. The protectors had been gods. Speed was worse. Gods could be bargained with, prayed to, adored. He could not. Speed was hunger wearing the flesh of man. His gift was not just velocity. He was untouchable, skin harder than iron, nerves rewoven to withstand the forces that should have torn him apart. Bullets flattened against him like raindrops against stone. Fire rolled over him, freezing at the edges of his personal cyclone. He had once run straight through an armored tank, his body punching through steel plating as if it were parchment. Now he hunted his own kind. A sound drew him. Down below, in the ruins of an old subway station, he caught the thrum of breath. 3 of them, maybe 4. Survivors. His mouth twisted in something close to amusement. He knew the stories whispered about him. The devil of velocity, the storm of blood. Parents told their children not to speak his name aloud, lest the sound itself summon him. They weren't wrong. He dropped into the station like a thunderclap, landing in the dirt and wreckage, his body uncaring of the fall. Dust erupted in waves around him. The survivors screamed. One of them, a man, maybe 40, beard gone to ragged threads, pulled up a rifle scavenged from the last real army patrols. He barely had the chance to flick off the safety. By the time his finger found the trigger, the weapon was gone. The man blinked, confused, then realized Speed held the rifle in his hands. The barrel bent into a grotesque curve. "Bang," Speed said softly. His voice was calm, even friendly. The man's courage collapsed. He dropped to his knees, hands up, whispering apologies to no one in particular. The 2 others, a woman clutching a child, pressed back against the far wall of the station, as if stone could save them. Speed tilted his head. His gaze fell on the child first. A boy, maybe 6, thin, hollow-eyed, trembling in his mother's grip. He was young enough not to fully understand who or what stood before him. The boy opened his mouth to cry. Speed was across the room before the sound could form. One hand clamped gently over the boy's lips. The gesture almost looked tender. The mother gasped, tried to pull him back, but the attempt was as meaningless as dragging a mountain. Speed crouched, studying the child, his pale blue eyes reflecting the faint glow of broken neon seeping down from the street above. "You're quiet," he murmured. "That's good. Quiet things survive longer." The mother sobbed. Speed let the boy go and straightened. "I'm not here for you," he said, voice carrying through the chamber. "Not tonight. I want you to remember that. I want you to tell the others you hide with. Tell them Speed walked into your den and let you live. And tell them I will not be so merciful next time." The survivors stared at him in mute horror. He lingered a moment longer, savoring their silence. Fear had a flavor, metallic, sharp, humming at the edge of human sound. He could almost taste it on his tongue, the way a man might taste rain in the air before a storm. Once, he had been addicted to applause. Now, fear serves the same purpose. It reminded him that he was still something in this dead world. He blurred an emotion again, a pale streak cutting through the subway's darkness, gone in less than a blink. The survivors collapsed into each other's arms, trembling, unsure if they had just been spared or marked. Above, Speed stood atop the skeletal remains of a high-rise, wind slicing around his figure. His coat fluttered in tatters, long since burned and shredded by friction. His skin bore no scars. He stared at the skyline. The city was dead, but beyond it, the world still bled. He could hear it, the faint, distant explosions of protector battles in neighboring zones. Once they had fought villains. Now they fought themselves. Power unchecked had rotted them from within. Titan, the man of stone, had leveled a continent's worth of farmland because the people would not kneel fast enough. Shard, mistress of crystalline matter, had impaled entire refugee columns to teach discipline. Even the Sun Father himself, the shining god of light, burned cities for amusement. Speed had joined them once. He had stood shoulder to shoulder with gods. He remembered the moment it had broken. Not a grand betrayal, not a war, just a simple thing. A village in the east, people clapping, singing, calling out his name as he dragged water pipes through the desert faster than machines ever could. Children ran at his feet, laughing, trying to mimic his blur. For a single evening, he felt human, needed. Then Sunfather arrived. The man of light had looked down at the village, at its clay houses and crude tools, and declared it a waste of time. They needed discipline, he said. They needed to bend. And then, in a blaze brighter than any dawn, the village was ash. Speed had stood there, the laughter of children still echoing in his skull, watching their skeletons crumble into dust. Something inside him had cracked, clean and final. He did not fight Sunfather. He never raised his hand. He simply ran, and he never stopped. Now he killed them. Not out of vengeance, not for justice, simply because it was the only thing left to do. The world was ash and silent. Hunting his former brethren gave the silence a rhythm, a heartbeat. Without it, he suspected he might unravel completely. He closed his eyes and listened. There it was, the distant whistle of Shard's crystalline storms, carried on the wind from the southern sector. Screams beneath it, the collapse of buildings, the wet crunch of bodies reduced to pulp. Speed's smile sharpened. He had found his next race. He crouched low, body tensing, the world around him slowing into syrup. A single drop of rain hung in the air before his eyes, frozen. He watched it glisten, then launch forward. The drop shattered into mist as the air collapsed behind him. The city became a blur, lights and ruins bending into streaks of color. Every step he took broke the sound barrier, yet he barely noticed. His thoughts ran alongside him, memories flickering in fragments. The boy in the subway, the village of ash, the endless roar of applause that had once filled stadiums when he was still a savior. What was he now? A predator? A redeemer? Or merely a weapon looking for something sharp enough to finally cut him down? The thought lingered as the horizon split open with light. Shar was at work. Even from miles away, he saw the crystalline spires thrusting up from the ground, jagged monuments of glass refracting the fire of burning buildings. Screams carried on the wind, thin and ragged. Shard herself stood amidst the chaos, a silhouette gleaming with fractured armor of her own creation. Speed slowed, watching from the edge of a broken overpass. His chest rose and fell with something close to anticipation. Unlike the survivors, unlike the scavengers and children and ragged men who cowered in ruins, Shard would not beg. She would not plead. She would fight, and in her defiance, maybe, just maybe, he would feel alive again. He drew in a breath, letting it out slow. The world stilled around him. The next heartbeat would carry him into her storm. Speed smiled one last time, and then he ran. Chapter 2. Splinters of Glass. The first sound was the shatter, glass upon glass, grinding against itself, building into a keening wail that seemed to pierce marrow. Even before Speed reached the southern sector, the storm of shards' wrath bled into the air like broken music. The skyline bristled with her signature monuments, needles of crystalline matter rising from cracked asphalt, curling like the ribs of some colossal skeleton clawing its way to the surface. Street lamps fractured into prisms, neon split into thousands of jagged beams. She had made a cathedral of ruin. Speed stopped on the edge of her domain, perched atop the crumpled husk of a transport bridge. The city behind him was silence and dust. Before him stretched a wilderness of glittering knives. And at the heart of it, she stood. Shard, draped in living crystal, shards spiraling around her body in a grotesque ballet. Her eyes twin shards of diamond flame. She was sculpting. Bodies hung suspended in her crystal growths, frozen in grotesque poses. A man reaching for his child, a soldier with his rifle raised, a woman shielding her face with both arms. They were still alive inside some of the prisons. He could hear their muffled cries. Flesh pressed against transparent walls, lungs gasping for air, eyes wide in terror. Shard did not kill quickly. She encased, displayed, arranged. Her art was suffering. Speed felt the edges of a smirk tug at his mouth. They had once stood shoulder to shoulder, a perfect team. Shard had been elegant, brilliant, her constructs indestructible, her control surgical. He remembered the cheers when she carved entire bridges for cities in an hour, weaving glittering causeways across rivers. She had saved millions. Now she displayed thousands as trophies. "Speed," she said without turning, her voice carrying perfectly across the razor landscape. Her words cut sharper than her glass. "You came." He stepped down from the bridge, the ground beneath him crunching into splinters. His voice was low, calm. "You're making noise. Hard not to hear." Finally, she faced him. Shard's mouth twisted into something halfway between a smile and a sneer. "Noise? No, this is music. The last music humanity deserves." She gestured lazily, and a dozen captives screamed inside their crystalline prisons as the walls constricted. The sound warped, hollow, like a choir filtered through water. Speed tilted his head, studying her. "You always liked the audience, and you always liked pretending you weren't one of us." He didn't argue. For a moment, they only regarded one another. The city's wind cut between them, carrying the whistle of glass, the far-off sobs of the encased. Speed's muscles thrummed, itching to move. Shard's hands floated at her sides, each finger ringed by shards waiting to be unleashed. "Do you know why you came?" she asked suddenly. "Do you even know anymore, Speed? You tell yourself you hunt us, that you're different. But I remember you. You basked in the cameras as much as the rest of us. Do you really think you run toward justice? Or do you just run because you can't stop?" Her words scraped something raw inside him. Memories, the roar of stadiums, children wearing his symbol painted across their faces, the thrill of being the fastest man alive. "You shove it down. Doesn't matter why," he said flatly. "It only matters how this ends." Her laugh was like shattering glass. "Good. Then let's end it." The world bent. Speed launched forward, the air imploding in his wake. Shard's hand snapped up, and a wall of crystal exploded from the ground. He hit at mock speeds and burst through, shards detonating outward like gunfire. A dozen slivers ripped into fleeing survivors behind him, screams punctuating the explosion. Speed didn't stop. He was already on her. His fist swung at her jaw, faster than sight. A dome of crystal bloomed around her in a heartbeat, his punch cratering it, but not breaking through. Shard spun, spikes erupting from the dome like a sea urchin. Speed vanished in a blur, reappearing yards away, untouched. The ground where he had stood was a forest of knives. "You're still slow," he mocked. "You're still arrogant." She thrust her hand outward, and a storm of shards erupted, each piece spinning so fast they hummed. They chased him, curving midair, guided by her will. Speed darted between them, weaving through alleys, but the shards hunted relentlessly, cutting down walls and slicing through vehicles as though they were paper. He pushed faster. The world blurred, narrowed. His thoughts slowed into crystalline clarity. Every microsecond stretched, every shard's angle measured. He twisted, spun, let them pass within hairs of his invulnerable flesh. To an outside eye, the storm swallowed the entire street. To Speed, it was a dance. He ended it by leading them back toward her. In an instant, he reversed course, the shards chasing into her orbit. Shard raised a hand, diverting half, but 36 slammed back into her armor. The explosion of diamond on diamond rattled the ruins. She staggered, blood streaking her lip. Speed appeared before her, crouched, eyes locked. "That's one," he murmured. Her glare could have cut steel. "You think this is a game?" "It's a race," he said, "and you're losing." She screamed, the sound rippling with fury. All around them, the crystalline cathedral convulsed. Spires collapsed and reformed, streets split open. Captives were crushed inside their prisons as the storm intensified. The city itself seemed to become her weapon. Speed felt a flicker of something unusual in his chest. Not fear. He had long forgotten the taste of that. No, it was closer to excitement. For the first time in months, his heart stuttered against the rhythm of battle. Shard wasn't prey. She was another predator. The ground cracked beneath him as he sprinted again. Shard's arms moved in a blur, summoning walls, blades, lattices, each countering his impossible velocity. Each time he smashed through, blood sprayed. Not his, but hers, each impact carving deeper. She screamed curses, old words they had shared when they were still protectors. Words like brother, words like family. They meant nothing now. He drove her through her own cathedral, every strike collapsing monuments she had spent hours weaving. Glass dust filled the air, glittering like snow. Survivors still trapped in her prisons wailed as they were thrown into darkness when their cages shattered. Some crawled free, bleeding. Others suffocated in silence. Finally, Speed caught her throat. One hand, immovable. Her crystal armor splintered against his grip. Her eyes widened, shards circling desperately, but he was too fast, too close. "You made art out of corpses," he said softly. "You don't deserve to run anymore." He twisted. Her neck snapped like brittle glass. Shard's body slumped, crystals collapsing into dust around them. The storm fell silent. For the first time in days, the southern sector was quiet. Survivors staggered from their prisons, half dead, unsure whether to thank or curse the figure standing amidst the wreckage. Speed dropped her corpse. The rush drained instantly. No triumph, no satisfaction, only the silence again, heavy and endless. He stood there for a long moment, listening to the survivors' sobs, the crackle of distant fires. His chest rose and fell, and in the pit of his mind he asked the question he never said aloud. How many more? How many gods must he kill before the world remembered how to breathe? The wind shifted, carrying a faint sound from the north. Explosions, the low roar of fire. Another protector was on the move. Speed's eyes narrowed. He turned away from Shard's corpse, and he ran. Chapter 3, The Weight of Stone. The storm had ended, but the silence that followed was heavier than thunder. Shard's body lay broken among the ruins of her cathedral. Her glass armor had dissolved into dust, leaving only human flesh behind, frail, bloodied, unremarkable. Without her constructs, she was just another corpse in a city of graves. The survivors stumbled free from their prisons. They blinked in the haze, blood dripping down their faces where shards had cut too deep, lungs heaving ragged breaths. Some cried with relief. Some fell to their knees in prayer. Most simply stared at the thing that had killed their captor. They stared at Speed. He stood among the wreckage, motionless. Dust clung to his coat. His skin was untouched. His chest rose and fell in a calm rhythm, utterly alien beside the gasping crowd. The people did not cheer. They did not rush to thank him. They drew back, clutching children, clutching weapons, clutching each other. One man spat in the dirt. "You're no better than her," the man rasped, his voice hoarse from screaming inside his glass cage. "You kill, you destroy, and then you run. You're all the same." A murmur rippled through the group. Fear, anger, hopelessness. Speed's gaze slid toward the man. His head tilted slightly bird-like. In the silence that followed, every survivor seemed to brace for violence. One heartbeat, too. Then Speed looked away. "Run north," he said flatly. His voice carried without effort. "The southern sector is dead. If you move fast, you'll find shelter in the old metro tunnels. The other protectors don't go there." He didn't wait for thanks. He didn't expect it. He blurred into motion, leaving them in a rush of displaced air that scattered dust across their faces. The survivors stood in silence for a long time after he was gone. Some wept, some cursed, a few whispered prayers. Not of gratitude, but of protection. The devil of velocity had spared them. For now, Speed ran until the city blurred into wasteland. Every ruined tower, every shattered highway, every rusted shell of a transport vehicle streaked past in a smear of gray. Time bent with him, stretching and slowing until only the sound of his own breath remained constant. But no matter how fast he moved, he couldn't outrun memory. Shard's last words echoed in his skull. "You just run because you can't stop." She wasn't wrong. The rush of battle had been sharp, intoxicating, the first thing in months that pierced through the numb silence. But it is gone now. She was gone, and already the hunger returned, gnawing at him. Not hunger for food, not thirsty, a deeper, hollower ache. The hunger for momentum, the compulsion to move, to fight, to feel the world resist him. If he stopped too long, he feared the silence would finally crush him. He burst through the shell of an old freight station, scattering pigeons that had long since learned to nest in the carcasses of trains. Beyond it stretched the wasteland, a flat sprawl of cracked earth and collapsed industry. The bones of factories jutted from the ground, their smokestacks bent and blackened. And in the distance, rising above the ruin like a mountain that had grown legs, stood Titan. Speed slowed, standing atop the ridge of it.